Welcome on a beautiful, somewhat chill and sunshiny and rainy, and if you've looked at the mountains, even snowing morning. Welcome. I'm Reverend Matthew, pastor of this congregation, and today with Debbie Roberts, with Chris Tackett, with Joel Yelland, who will be joining us. Yeah, okay. Joel is making coffee right now. He will join us after that as our song leader, with our welcomers, our audiovisual team, and of course, hospitality that makes the coffee now so that we can have it afterwards. We welcome you to this Baja for Sunday, this Pulpitpalooza. Because you see, just as it takes nearly 20 people working together to create our Sunday morning for you, and thank you all for your time and your talent, it takes hundreds to bring our faith tradition to life here in southern Arizona. We work together as the Baja Four. Our congregation, the UU congregation in Tucson, UUCT, the Borderlands UU congregation serving southern Arizona, and Sky Island UU serving in Sierra Vista and its surrounding communities. And every once in a while, we bring ourselves together for a worship service like this one. Because we believe, it's our motto, that we are stronger together. And for some time now, and the t-shirts are coming out this next month, we reach out and share our faith together, sharing time and talent like the presence that we've had at the Tucson Festival of Books these many years, and what we've just begun with the Pride Fest here in Tucson, and hopefully the Pride Fest in southern Arizona. We reach inward and we reach deep for the support for one another. We've led 4 study groups on the proposed changes that our association is suggesting that we make to the covenant in Article 2. We've shared in our whole lives programming so that we can offer age-appropriate, fact and science-based sex and sexuality curriculum to the children, to the youth, to the adults of our communities. And together we've created the Desert Ritual Year, DRY for short, that takes 12 monthly themes and pairs it not to the 4 seasons, but to the 5 seasons that we have here in Sonora, Arizona. And this month, the Baja 4 shares a dry theme, generosity. We tie generosity to the start of spring, even though today we've been set back to winter. In the amazing skies of Arizona, we find that metaphor, we find that meaning of generosity. And we explore what it means together. It's just as my friend and colleague, the Reverend Bethany, who's over at the UU Church of Tucson, explains. Please.
On March 7th, 2020, just over 4 years ago, I sent an email to Reverend Matthew Funk Crary, Reverend Tina Squire, and Reverend Samantha Wilson. The title of that email was Baja 4 Zoom Worship, ? In that email, I proposed that we think about doing a Zoom worship all together in light of the trickling in recommendations that we not gather in person for a few weeks or more. The idea was met with 3 enthusiastic yeses. I love it. I'm in. Great idea. And Reverend Tina also wrote, thank you for thinking outside the box and finding some tiny positive possibility in the midst of something ominous. That's when amazing things happen in churches, I find. Well, Reverend Tina was prescient, or perhaps prophetic. Amazing things did happen. We ended up worshiping together for over 18 months. Our worship staff met together weekly, and your ministers continue to meet weekly for collegial and congregational support. I come back to the value of generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Our Baja 4, these past 4 years, has been the embodiment of generosity. Throughout the pandemic, throughout that time of upheaval and anxiety, our work together cultivated a spirit of gratitude and hope, both in us and in many of you. We shared and continue to share our resources, tallying the relationships we are building across congregations rather than how many hours each congregation has contributed to our shared project. And through our work together, we have felt our interdependence with one another, our mutuality of relationship. We said over and over again, we are stronger together. And that was then and still is so true. In at least a couple of our congregations, we are in the midst of our annual pledge drive, our stewardship campaign. This is a time when we are encouraging you to invest in your congregations to help it maintain and grow and thrive. And I want to offer a framework rooted in the value of generosity that I read a few times. When you invest in your congregations, you are investing in the Baja 4. Because if we are stronger together, if we truly believe that, then our strength as a Baja 4 is interdependent with the strength of the congregation or congregations that you belong to and that you give to. When one of us thrives, we all thrive. So give generously to your congregation or congregations this year. We are counting on you. Throughout this service, you will hear different reflections on generosity from other ministers. And we are inviting you to go to menti.com and put in the code that you'll see at the bottom of this screen. When you're at Menti, you're going to submit your answer to this question. In one word, how do you practice generosity as a Unitarian Universalist? In one word, how do you practice generosity as a Unitarian Universalist? And again, if you want to submit your answer to that, you can go to menti.com and put in the code that's at the bottom of this screen. Welcome to this celebration of what the Baja 4 has been, is now, and could be. Come, let us worship together.
Our chalice lighting today is entitled The Abundance of Our Lives Together, and was written by Katie Silvani Gelfand, who's a UU religious educator. We light our chalice as a symbol of gratitude as we celebrate the abundance of our lives together. In this sanctuary, we harvest bushels of strength for one another and offer our crop with the hands of compassion and generosity. In the authentic and gentle manner of our connections, we cultivate a simple sweetness to brighten our spirits. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift each other, for it is in the sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us.
We're working a few things out. Which is what we do, right? We do that as a congregation. We do that when we care for one another in the many joys and the many sorrows that come in between our Sundays together. As we gather here as a community of faith once again, we honor all of those joys and sorrows in a simple ritual. We pour out water. Sil, would you mind pouring that in there? Please. This water that we've collected as a congregation from many travels, from our homes, and we've collected it from the rain. And that's why there's some sticks and leaves in it from right out front this morning. We pour this into a common vessel as a symbol of our community, of our bonds. And then we come and we share the different joys and sorrows that have been lifted up to our pastoral care team. This week, the announcement that we have is that Mark Skinner, Mark and Milana and their kids have not been here recently because he's been in and out of the hospital. He's had over 22 blood transfusions and continues to struggle with his own health, and he's just not yet 40. They have asked for our thoughts and prayers at this time as Stacy Sosa, who heads up our religious exploration committee and our program, and I give direct pastoral aid to the family. But I will say in our communications, their sense of humor continues on and on and on. And so know that not only are we praying with them, but we are laughing with them through these struggles. You know what? Would you take a stone for all of the sorrows? Just one stone. Sorrows that we name, that we share with each other, but sorrows that are still within our hearts, sorrows that perhaps we don't have yet the strength or courage to name, and yet we still hold them here. And then one for our joy. Joys that lift our hearts like the snow dusting the mountaintops. Joys that lift our hearts like the beautiful flowers we can anticipate after these brief rains, these last hours. The joy that carries us, whether they've been named or they're just present here among us. We hold them as well. Our pastoral care team will be continuing to listen to your joys and sorrows. Please reach out to any of us, Sil or anyone else. We've got Tom Bunch up there. Everybody knows Tom, so he's a good way to connect. Share your joy or sorrow that you would like to have the team know about. And then we'll ask to make sure that we can share that with our community. Share that on Sunday mornings. And then we will. We do this because this is how we care for one another. It is more than a symbol of our community. We drop our joys and sorrows in among us, and we support one another through the many, many ripples. May it be so. Thank you. The first hymn we are singing together this morning, our sacred song, is number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Know that this is being sung at the other three congregations as well. Please rise in body or in spirit and join your voices together with Joel leading us.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Wonderful, thank you. Please be seated. And now a contemplation from my friend and colleague, Reverend Tina of Sky Island UU in Sierra Vista.
Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. Let's take a moment to savor those words. Generosity itself is so rich. It shares a root with words like generational and genesis. And the root gen means birth and production. And isn't there something generative about really good generosity, leading to love and resilience in any community it's part of? I do think that gratitude comes along with good generosity. It's when we step back and acknowledge the good and beauty in our lives that we can give out of abundance instead of scarcity, that we give more fully because there's a thanks, there's a gracia, there's a gratitude and grace involved. But how about hope? Often we are in a time when we don't really know if we are giving into abundance. We don't know the future. Almost exactly 4 years ago, on March 20th, 2020, we put up our first joint Baja 4 worship service together, not knowing what the future held, not knowing what would happen in this pandemic, or when our churches would meet again. We had to plant seeds of hope, take that risk and be vulnerable. But isn't that also part of the balancing act of generosity? As we discussed generosity, the Baja 4 ministers came up with another word, boundaries. When we give, there has to be boundaries. Mother Teresa talks about giving until it hurts. I really don't like that phrase. I like the idea of giving until you're out of your comfort zone and risking growth. And even if you feel like you're giving, you also have to do some change and hard work in yourself. But giving until you're depleted and can't breathe, that is too much. That is unboundaried giving. And what about giving until the gift is what is needed? Those who are receiving generosity have to say what they need and want. I walked through a banana plantation in 2000 and saw a pristine, carefully constructed house and wondered why no one lived in it when this was soon after Hurricane Mitch and many houses were needed. And I was told that a country that had generously decided to give 1% of its gross national product to others in need had come and created this house and put it there in the plantation, never asking cultivators of bananas what they needed to live in. And so the house was useless to them and stood empty. We have to ask, we have to hear, we have to tell. There are boundaries to generosity. And as I explored research about generosity, the organizational psychologist Adam Grant has given me 3 new words: that most people are either takers, matchers, or givers in organizations. Takers want to put as little effort in to take as much out for themselves. And they like to take as much of the credit as possible without sharing it. Often you will see a report about a company, and if the CEO has a whole spread for his or her photo, be wary. They may well be takers. But if their picture doesn't show up at all, if the font in their name is tiny, this means they're sharing credit. They may be givers. Most of us are matchers. We give to those people we know can give back to us. We don't waste our resources, which are precious, on people who can't reciprocate. Most of us are matchers. But the givers are both the most successful and often the least successful people in an organization. It depends on how you give. If you give because you just don't know how to say no, if you give until you're exhausted and depleted and you don't have a goal in mind, really you are giving to receive back, to receive love, attention, to never let anyone down. That's kind of an unboundaried giving that isn't helpful. In my, as a minister, I've often had boundary training, and my favorite awareness came one year when we discussed trying to be superhuman. We're tempted to give as much as we give and also promise more than we can deliver. But if we do that, if we try to put on capes and give everything possible, we will let people down. There's another word we need to embrace, and that is humility. Not because we need to be ashamed or crushed down, but because of humus and dirt and earth. We, as Unitarian Universalists, need to be grounded in this earth, in this world that we want to heal and help to grow. And so we need to remember our limitations and not promise what we can't deliver. But then there are givers who truly give out of a sense of joy and for a purpose. They give because they love the people they're helping. They don't really care if the networking they offer helps them in any way. They are giving to something larger, like science or denomination, and that in itself is its own reward. Now, I don't want to pat us on the back and say how amazing we are, but I do believe that as the Baja Four, we stepped out in faith and vulnerability. We never counted in a matchy way, tit for tat, what we were giving. We never said, well, you're a bigger church and you're smaller and you're giving more and you're giving less. We just gave out of gratitude for having each other, for having other resources and churches and musicians and religious educators to work with. We gave blessed by the members of our congregation who also gave of their art and their music and their crazy videos with flying objects. We were blessed by being generative together and never counting fully the cost, because we aimed for something larger. Not only our individual churches, not only the Baja Four, but a faith that tries to make sense of this world and heal it, working in community together. May we continue to do that. May we be generous and generative. May we have good boundaries and hope and show vulnerability and gratitude for each other. May we, blessed.
I invite you to a time of meditation, of word and silence, of breath and rest, of embodying generosity. I invite you to breathe as your body requires. As you can, lengthen and deepen your breathing. As you can, rest your body. as you rest, turn one hand up and the other hand down, and then rest them on your lap. This is giving and receiving. As you breathe, as you rest, allow for generosity in your body. Generosity as a thought. Generosity as a sensation. Generosity as an emotion. Feel it in your body. Feel your gratitude. What you have received. Feel your hope for tomorrow that you give. Giving and receiving. Gratitude and hope. Feel it in yourself and feel it in this people, this place. Generosity among us. And as you can, lengthen your awareness, stretch it out to be aware that there are other Unitarian, Universalist, faith communities who at this moment feel generosity. Feel it in your body, feel it in this people, this place, this faith. Generosity, gratitude and hope, alongside the generosity of so many others, in a faith that guides us to be stronger together. Breathe as you need to, rest as you must. Be held in the Baja 4.
Yes, those of you who have a working memory, this is indeed the same song that we did 2 weeks ago. And the other congregations around Southern Arizona are getting it via recording this morning. And we are fortunate enough to have our wonderful choir here to do it for us live. A number of years ago, when I was living in San Antonio, Texas, I worked for National Public Radio. I worked for the local NPR affiliate station, KPAC, the classical music station. Among my duties, I hosted overnight shifts from 6 to midnight and midnight to 6 a.m. And during fund drives, boy, do I have stories about fund drives to tell you sometime, but during the fund drives, they used to just basically give up from midnight to 6 a.m. because there's nobody and no way they expect to make any money from after midnight. I turned that on its ear because I love to tell the story of how one voice makes a difference. I would start at midnight and play a lovely solo sonata, usually one of the Bach solo sonatas for solo violin. One violin by itself. It's beautiful, but it's one violin. And then I'd play a duet, and sometimes then a trio, and then a quartet, and a quintet, until usually around 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I would get up to full orchestra. You may think that one voice doesn't make a difference, but 2 voices, 3 voices, 50 voices, 1 congregation, 4 congregations, and as Matthew just said, many congregations working together. We can and we will change the world. And what musical way of saying that except the Waylon Jennings and Ruth Moody's beautiful song, One Voice.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. Sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices 3, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices 3. This is the sound of voices 3.
Thank you. Thank you. The other congregations are only getting a recording of that this morning. Thank you. And now, my friend and colleague, Jamili Omar, who is the Baja 4 ministerial intern, among many other hats that she wears.
We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Hi, friends. As the Baja 4 coordinator and ministerial intern, I was tasked with reviewing our years as the Baja 4. And to be honest, I'm not sure I'm up to this task. I'm not sure anyone's up to this task. So I'm sitting at the UUCT Welcome Center in front of our painting, which reads, "We are as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert," looking for some inspiration. We say this saying every week in worship in our welcome words, and it feels fitting as a reflection on the Baja 4. Not only are we as unique as the blooms, we created the Baja 4 through radical generosity and welcome. This collective that we are creating together is unique, maybe in the world, in at least two ways. Each congregation has welcomed all the others in their doors. And I mean this literally. We have experienced our ministers rotating where they lead worship on Sundays. We have congregants just stop by on a Sunday morning because they want to hear the exciting topic a different worship team has prepared. And second, we have invited each other to much-loved social and justice activities. People from across the region and far beyond our region stop by things like our discussion groups, our coffee hours, and our programs. And ultimately, the time-consuming labor of love, it didn't actually have to work out. Maybe it's a miracle that it did. Thing that we're creating, we come together as a community, rooted only in our commitments to each other and to living our values out loud. It didn't have to work, and yet it does. We have created something that is more than the sum of its parts. In this way, the Baja 4 has some of the hallmarks of a concept in sociology that is called the third place. The first two social environments that a person regularly engages in are home, and for a lot of us, work. We tend to seek, however, an additional place, which sociologist Ray Oldenburg calls the third place. He wrote, "The third place is a generic designation for a variety of public places that host the regular, voluntary, informally, and happily anticipated gatherings of individuals beyond the realms of home and work." He continues, "Examples of third places include churches, cafes, bars, clubs, community centers, public libraries, gyms, bookstores, makerspaces, stoops, parks, theaters, opera houses, among many others." And as we witness these institutions in decline, we know how much more important it is that we have a third place that we call the Baja 4. Ray Oldenburg argues that third places are important for civil society, for democracy, civic engagement, and establishing feelings of a sense of place. 4 years ago, so many of us experienced a collapse in our third places. As we began working from home, we also began homing at what was now our workplace. We might have sought out safer out of our homes, locations such as parks and mountains to supplement our spaces. And for many of us, the third space became online. We knew each other only in these little Zoom boxes. I've known some of you only in this square. Oldenburg reminds us, though, that whether they are virtual or literal, all third spaces are important for our social and emotional well-being. And how do we measure the impact of our third space, the Baja 4? What metric can we accurately use? The hours of programming that we have created, maybe. The friendships that are emerging and the number of connections made. The gigabytes of film footage of our leaders doing all manner of silly and sometimes serious things. The number of miles we have driven between our congregations. The hours of Zoom calls that have kept us safe and connected across space. And the on-the-fly learning of how to use Zoom and the other pesky technologies. Maybe we just count the last 4 years in love. If you have ever come to an event with me, I'm asking you now, remind me to take pictures. These images that I want to show you are just a few of the many big and small things we have done together over the years, which I just regularly forget to take pictures of. We've have our T-Birds and our winter visitors events. We've had safety trainings. We've had trips to the splash pads and Humane Society fundraising and so much more that I've forgotten to take pictures of. So what is the future of our collective? We have some concrete ideas. For example, there's a team of us plotting how we can teach a cohort of a new program called Creating Theology Together next fall. It will invite more of us into a discussion of beliefs, philosophies, and ideas about what that which is most important to us means to us. Religious exploration will start a year of study of the world's religions. Youth and adults will have the chance to learn about these faiths and then visit a few houses of worship. We hope to expand our public witness. Building on the momentum of the Tucson Festival of Books, we plan to attend Pride in Bisbee and Tucson and see what other events come up that we can live our values in the world. And you can have as big or small of a part in these events as you're moved to. Join the Baja 4 newsletter and you'll see updates every week on what's happening across the region. But however much or little you engage with the Baja 4, all of us can experience belonging in all three spaces: home, work, church. But maybe we need to consider that we've added not only a third space, another third space, but maybe a fourth space, the Baja 4, a community holding your community in a loving embrace. For me, this is what the call to freely and compassionately share our faith and presence and resources means. We welcome each other. We give and receive as much as we comfortably, responsibly can of our time, talent, and treasures. We embrace our differences and our commonalities to create a culture of generosity than one of obligation. Generosity is an invitation to join in. Won't you join? We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence,
she doesn't need
and
to
resources.
tell us again.
Hi, friend.
Thank you. We'll record. It's all recorded. It'll be online later this week if you wanted to hear her once again. I want to invite you to remain seated for our next sacred song that Joel will lead us in. We'll sing it through 3 times. From you I receive. I want to invite your awareness. This too is being sung at 3 other congregations this morning.
From you I receive, for you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Thank you. Religions are far from infallible. They are transient elements in the way that we worship. As you've seen, things change from week to week. There are boundaries which we cannot or will not yet see or confront as people of faith. But these are borderlands, places where we are challenged by the different and the strange. What do we find difficult to see? Who among us has the vision? What revelations hover in the hearts and in our minds? These are the edges of the future. And these are the words of my dear friend and colleague, the Reverend Susan Mankerseal, who I'm holding her hand right this moment. Her wisdom was born 30 years ago. She helped to gather ministers from congregations once a month during lunch, the gathering that continues today. That group had no way of predicting what to expect or what we would do to deepen their ministry and become a collaboration of 4 congregations. They just knew that they needed one another. They needed one another deeply, meaningfully. They needed to celebrate their congregation's changes and challenges together, because they are both in ministry. Yes. They needed to commiserate the transient and the fallibility of congregational life. They needed one another. Those early colleagues were in the borderlands of ministry, on the edge of the future, and the relationship that they forged would become our trajectory. And since those early gatherings through different events and workshops and projects, the hosting of a Justice District Assembly, a plethora of Pulpitpaloozas. You can say that with me 5 times fast if you want. We'll do it later. We even gone through a global pandemic. We've gone through a global pandemic. We've gone through a global pandemic. And we've discovered that our congregations need each other as well. Sometimes that can be hard to perceive, that we are more than just interconnected, that we've become interdependent. And sometimes it can seem like a weakness. And that sounds odd, doesn't it? But in our society that prizes the individual and holds independence at the core of success, dependence may sound strange, different. Just needing one another. You might suspect that would draw attention away from our individual congregations. It might distract from our different needs, our distinct church events and workshops and projects. It could divert resources of time and talent and treasure away from our community to what? T-shirts and stuffed animals? Thankfully, scarcity behind such thoughts is not a value of our faith, but we are finding that generosity is. Since the very first meeting of those ministers many years ago, generosity has been at our core. As our history of celebration and commiseration and collaboration exemplifies, here in the Baja 4, generosity is generative. It answers and it amplifies. For years, the simple generosity of sharing time in a meal each month answered the needs of ministers for collegiality, and it amplified their individual ministries while they wandered in the borderlands. By their example, the generosity of our congregations, shared time and talent and treasure has brought us together, and it takes our faith out to thousands in our region. Thousands of people know about us because of the generosity of the Baja 4. We have shared in our whole lives training, and I am so proud of this. Because the world right now needs science-based, age-appropriate, accurate sex and sexuality curriculum to our youth and elders. It needs what we are doing. Generosity has brought us to worship at the border, to sing and lament the ongoing immigration injustices across Arizona borderlands. It amplifies who we partner with, those who would save lives in the desert and those who would accompany them as they seek asylum. Today, our generous collaboration answers the harassment and intimidation directed to our congregations for just expressing those values, for living our faith in the broader community through our interdependent strength. Together, we amplify safety. We show up for one another. We engage in training addressing the digital, mental health, and physical threats that are very, very real. In short, we are stronger and we are safer together. And what might our Baja 4 generosity bring us tomorrow as we move into an election year and we can anticipate undemocratic, hateful, vicious rhetoric in our news feeds and at our doorsteps? Having served our Baja 4 congregations for over 10 years now, I don't know. And the beauty is, I don't have to. There's no reason why I, a single person, one voice, should have the answer that all of our voices together have. Ours is a community of collaboration, a shared ministry of one voice. And this can only emerge from each individual congregation relying, depending upon one another. And so for direction in these borderlands of our future, I turn back to Reverend Susan's lived example alongside those many ministers and religious educators and music directors and administrators and custodians and boards and lay leaders and members and friends and children and guests, and ask questions that we will, with humility, answer together. What do we find difficult to see among us and out in society, and how will we confront it? What revelations hover in our hearts and our minds, and how will we bring these to life through the Baja 4? And among us, who has new and renewed vision for tomorrow? How will we live it? These are things in our lives. There are things in our lives that will come and go. Worship styles and fashions will change. And the challenges we face will shift and they will move. But our answer and our amplification has been and always will be our generosity of spirit. As I have been taught to say by many, many others, many elders who speak it with me, Amen, Ashe, Aho. May it be so, as we choose it to be. Those other congregations are getting the video version of what I just offered you. So then a few words that no one else is getting that are just for us this morning. In a UU World magazine 1 year ago, in an article called Congregations Practicing Interconnection, the journalist Kat McKim wrote, "At this point, collaboration comes so naturally to Reverend Bethany, Reverend Tina, and Reverend Matthew that they inadvertently strayed into a collective aside during the interview for this article. We're using pre-recorded videos and hymns in our Sunday services," Reverend Bethany said, referring to the videos that we have seen. "We're doing that too," Reverend Matthew exclaimed. "Cool, I haven't done that yet," Reverend Tina replied, "But that makes a lot of sense. I could use those videos too." Article continues, "The ministers ease with each other masks the deep, deliberate, and extensive work that undergirds this partnership, one that has been decades in the making. The ministers of the Baja 4 congregations have had regular lunches together for decades, and the partnership was formalized and given its current name in 2015. But it wasn't until COVID struck in 2020 that years of casual partnerships solidified into something more robust. It wasn't just like, oh, cool, we're going to do a partnership," said Reverend Samantha Wilson, the former interim minister at Mountain Vista. It was really clear, like, what does the partnership mean? What does it ask of us? What are we promising? Jamili recalled, "And so we thought, how can we utilize resources to serve the 4 congregation rather than stretching ourselves thin to serve one? These ministers thoughtfully and intentionally built a strong foundation of trust between their congregations, and their partnerships are flourishing. In their interconnectedness, they found joy and strength and a more sustainable way forward." That this type of deep collaboration brings many benefits is clear to the ministers. I hope it's clear to all of you. So much so that they see interdependence as the way forward for Unitarian Universalism. The Baja 4 is for tomorrow. What we do in our interconnectedness and our interdependence with these congregations is not just something here in southern Arizona. It is the future of our faith tradition. And today we generously welcome Reverend Inga who is in service to Borderlands UU congregation. This is her first Sunday, and here is our video.
Welcome, Pastor Inga, to Borderlands UU and to the Baja 4. I am thrilled beyond belief that you have found a shared ministry together. As you begin this ministry together, I just have one piece of advice for you. Lean in. Borderland, you have been leaning in as this Baja 4 collaboration has grown and strengthened over the years. You have been part of what makes the Baja 4 strong, and you have also been held by the Baja 4 at times when you've needed to be held. And Inga, as a member of UUCT for a little while now, you have been part of what makes our congregation, what makes the net of the Baja 4 strong. And you have also been held by the Baja 4 and by UUCT as you've been exploring your Unitarian Universalist identity. As you continue in your shared ministry together, keep leaning in. Lean into the relationships we have with each other as colleagues, as congregations. Lean into our shared offering and our shared resources. Lean in when things are easy and when things are hard, when you really want to and when you'd really rather not. Just lean in. We are here to hold you. You, all together, make us stronger.
Welcome, Reverend Inga, to Borderlands, to the Baja 4, and to ministry in Unitarian Universalism. I have so enjoyed being part of a denomination that people kind of get. No more will you have to say to people, it's United Church of Christ. We do have instruments in worship. It's kind of like Presbyterian. No, welcome to ministry in a denomination that people kind of get. A few weeks ago, I was at the Festival of Books in Tucson at the Baja 4 table, and a young woman walked up, and she said that she was a pagan, but it was getting lonely doing ritual alone, and that we might have something for her. I handed her information about UUCT and their CUPS group. A couple days ago, a man came up to me after a meeting and said, I'm going to tell you something. I don't share often in Cochise County. I'm an atheist. And I said, you'd be welcome at our church. And he said, I know, that's why I'm going to stop by. So welcome, Inga. I hope you feel as loved and welcomed as I have been by these wonderful ministers, these amazing congregations, and a denomination where you can say what you mean and mean what you say. Welcome.
Hi, Pastor Inga. I'm here at UUCT in our children's library. I'm thinking about how each of our congregations is like a bookshelf. There are so many stories to be told. Each one of them is different and unique and special, and each one of them makes our bookshelves whole. And without them, without each of these books, we don't have a library. The Baja 4 is like that. We have so many stories, so much potential to develop. We will never read all of it, but we welcome you to try it out.
To paraphrase from The Princess Bride, love them as I have loved them, Reverend Inga, and there will be joy.
Inga, have some cake. Welcome.
Welcome, Inga.
Now, I know a lot of us are going to say the same things about the Baja 4, how wonderful it is, how we really are stronger together. I think we're a little bit sweeter together. I know we're all eating cake, but I say, why have eggs and flour and sugar? Skip all of that and go straight for the chocolate. Welcome, Pastor Inga.
Hello, Baja 4. I just want to thank you for such a beautiful welcome. I so appreciate your words of wisdom, and I don't have a cake yet, but I know I'm going to get one. So in the meantime, cheers with the Oreo.
And the cake is here, our quarter of the cake. We'll be bringing it out during fellowship. We'll be bringing out forks so that you can each take an individual bite of it. The only thing I ask is that I get the little plastic flower ring, please. Thank you. Our closing hymn together is number 128, The Fire of Commitment. And I would like to ask you to rise in body and in spirit and join your voices together as Joel leads us.
It says right here in front of me, with joy and energy. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment fills our mind and soul call us on our way. When we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise yields fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. Yeah.
Be seated.
Announcements.
Announcements. How did you know, Joel? And in fact, Joel is going to make the first announcement.
Yeah, the installation's coming up soon. On Saturday night, we have a chili feed, all right? You've probably been following this in the newsletter. I need volunteers, basically, cook volunteers. And that there are sign-up sheets in my usual chaotic style out at the end of the oasis over here. We need chili feed. We need cornbread, and we need desserts. The chili, a 6-quart crock pot, enough to feed 10 people, more or less. Cornbread, about 9 by 13 inch, okay, enough to feed 10 people. And desserts, whatever you want, but enough to feed 10 people. Yeah, very good. And not to forget boots. We're going to eat boots. No, we're not going to eat boots. No. I'm using cowboy boots as table centerpieces, okay? Conrad is first in line, but I need 5 more pairs of cowboy boots.
Got one.
All right, sign up. And frankly, the dingier the better. Yeah, this is Tucson after all. So let's see, chili, cornbread, desserts. Oh, when you sign up, please put your name, of course, but also your email address and your phone number. Thanks.
Thank you, Joel. There's a lot more information coming out about the installation. In fact, next week, it will really start to hit you with all the details of what's planned. As you leave our sanctuary this morning, not quite yet, you will find a wooden bowl and a woven basket on a chair just outside the doors. The bowl is for our congregation's ongoing ministries and programs, and the woven basket is for our monthly partner. This entire month, we will be collecting for your financial support for Primavera Foundation, and this church has a long association with Primavera, an organization which is focused on safe, affordable housing, workplace development, financial empowerment, and homeownership, and civic and community building and engagement. All of your gifts will be gratefully received. And the folks from Primavera have made it very easy for you. You will find a stack of these also in the Oasis room, and on here is a handy magnet, and it has the phone number and the email and the website for Primavera if you would care to make a donation that way. Okay, Renew You. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Today, after the service, Reverend Matthew restarts the Renew You sessions. These sessions are designed for everyone interested in deepening their understanding of Unitarian Universalism and how our congregation functions. Longtime members and first-time guests are all welcome to join in with curiosity and questions. Even if you have been before, sessions are based on what you want to know, so they are never the same. We begin today with the broad brushstrokes of our faith's history, theology, and covenant. Chris.
It's my turn. I do want to say quickly about the April 20th event, don't turn in all of your boots just yet. Bring your dancing boots, because we're going to have Tucson's own Little Big Band and our own Dan Ovid's Blue Prairie Dogs playing music for dancing. So it's going to be a very fun evening. You don't want to miss it. Speaking of fun evenings, coming up this Tuesday night, 2 nights from now, we're doing another chill event. It's a lovely, quiet, calm, relaxing evening. Come in here. We'll have tables set up. We'll have spaces set up for work. You can come in and sit and read, sit and meditate, sit and write. It's our spring chill event, the Still Chill event. This Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 o'clock. Come and go during that time as you wish, but just come, enjoy the relaxed atmosphere, enjoy the evening, hang out with friends, and you've got 2 hours of quiet time. Professional librarians will be on hand for shushing, but it'll be a fun evening and a chance to sit together in fellowship and community with no other real expectations involved. If you'd like to bring a snack or something to share for that would also be beautiful and welcome. And we'll be, after the reception this morning, after coffee hour this morning, we will be working on setting up for that event in here. So if you want to stick around and give us a hand this morning, I would appreciate that as well, too.
Thank you. In the Christian calendar, today is
Palm Sunday.
Palm Sunday, which means that next Sunday is Easter. We will be recognizing the Christian and pagan roots of this holiday with our beloved Unitarian Universalist ritual, the flower communion. Through our ritual, we will recognize the meanings of spring and rebirth. You are invited to bring a flower or several next Sunday. When you arrive, place it on the altar, and we will arrange it in a beautiful bouquet. During the service, you'll have the opportunity to select another flower and exchange it with all of those here. Okay, and then to the update on the nut butter drive. I know you've been waiting for that one. So, how many of you had lunch boxes filled with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? Yeah, fess up. Well, in Massachusetts, it was peanut butter and fluff. We had fluffanadas. Okay, if I say that correctly. In any case, I am just finding this here. Most kids in their lifetime will eat 1,500 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches before graduating from high school. How's that for a fun fact? Well, we've gone a long way to making that easier for kids in the Tucson area by the jars of peanut butter, nut butter that we have collected so far, 89 of them. But the goal is 110. So you still have next Sunday, if you haven't done so already, to bring in a jar of nut butter or contribute a second one. We also got some cash donations to help towards that effort. Okay, and then I think we have one more. General Assembly, there it is. Unitarian Universalists from around the country and across the world come together annually for our General Assembly. This year it is totally virtual, it's all online, a choice that has been made to make it more accessible to use everywhere. General Assembly, or GA, is time for both the business of our Association of Congregations and to share and learn from each other in workshops and worship. Our Board of Trustees is glad to announce that Steve Botoff will be one of our 3 delegates, but we still have openings for 2 more delegates. There is more information in the newsletter and on how to inform the board if you are interested. Okay, and our chalice closing today, Releasing the Flame, is entitled It Becomes More, and this was written by the Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern. When we take fire from our chalice, it does not become less, it becomes more. And so we extinguish our chalice, but we take its light and warmth with us, multiplying their power by all of our lives and sharing it with the world.
And by way of postlude this morning, we have a special treat for you. Our own Jane Paul playing a wonderful, wonderful piece of Chopin, the celebrated Minute Waltz, which is only called the Minute Waltz because of a translation error from the original French. It's not minute, as in 60 seconds, it's minuit, or minute. Somebody in translating it into English got it wrong, and forever after it's been known as the Minute Waltz, but it's really about 2.5 minutes, depending on how you play it. So, our own Jane Paul.